Hi guys, I am Alexandra. Welcome to my channel. I hope you all are staying safe and sane out there during these wild times that we're living in. It's been a few weeks since I shared my last video, which means I'm a little more pregnant today. I am 27 weeks pregnant, and that means that we are officially on our 3-month countdown to baby being here, which I cannot believe. But I wanted to just go ahead and jump right back in where I last left off on our 2018 minivan adventure. We had just traveled through Yosemite and were crossing the California border into Nevada, headed towards Yellowstone. So let's just go ahead and jump right back in time. On September 16th, 2018, we waved goodbye to California and started our drive east through Nevada, headed towards Wyoming for our next stop, the Grand Tetons. We were pretty impressed with the mountains and the pretty muted fall colors in northern Nevada. The only place I've ever been to in Nevada is Las Vegas, which is pretty much my least favorite place on planet Earth. But northern Nevada was really changing my perspective on the state. This was definitely one of the prettiest stretches of drive on our whole trip, other than our time in the national parks, or forests, of course. Traveling from Nevada to Wyoming was 750 miles and took us a few days of driving non-stop. The kind of driving where you try not to pull over to eat, stretch your legs, or get breathing space from your lovely significant other. It was definitely worth it though. Driving through Wyoming literally felt like we were driving in a painting. I was pretty blown away when we finally got to the Tetons. My eyeballs kept scanning the mountaintops, looking at all the details and formations on each peak. I felt like I needed to get out of the car and run through the field, singing The Sound of Music. We were both pretty stoked when we pulled up to our free campsite we found for the night. It just kept getting prettier as the night went on. We pulled up and parked around 5 or 6 p.m. and stayed till the next morning. This was our little house on wheels for those few months in 2018. It carried us across the country and kept us warm at night. I couldn't have imagined traveling from coast to coast any other way. We were able to bring everything we needed to be comfy and content. Plus, we didn't have to spend $1 on camping or staying at a hotel. It was a solid little car for our trial run to see if living on the road could be something more permanent for us. Johnner pulled out our camping chairs so we could watch the colors in the sky change and look at the stars come out. We only spent one day exploring the Tetons because we were so eager to get to Yellowstone. So the next morning we made tea and coffee, woke up all the way, soaked in the view a little more, and hit the road headed for Yellowstone. Yellowstone was hands down my most favorite place we visited on our 2018 road trip. Since I had never been before, I was seeing it all with new eyes. So naturally, I wanted my eyeballs to remember, so I filmed everything. We drove into Yellowstone through the south entrance, and our first stop was the West Thumb Geyser Basin. We almost didn't take the turn to drive into West Thumb, but it turned out to be my favorite spot in the park. There were so many different types of colors and pools. Plus, they were all right on the Yellowstone Lake. The basin is like a garden, but instead of flowers and vegetation, it's all beautifully colored pools of water. Like I've mentioned many times before, I'm a water person. Seeing all the different hued pools literally brought me to tears. I'm a Cancer, okay? I can't help it. I'm a sensitive, watery soul. There is something so nurturing and calming about being around water for me. I felt like I was in heaven walking around all of the otherworldly hot springs. It was pretty trippy looking at the beautiful light blue hot spring in contrast to the huge deep blue lake. Also, it was torture not being able to go swim in the pools, by the way. I mean, come on, look at those colors. Although it would have been much more torturous swimming in the scalding hot sulfurous pools. I really didn't want to leave Great Thumb, but I knew we had a lot more of the park to explore. There are such an overwhelming number of places in the park to visit, and we honestly hadn't planned our trip around the park before we got there. So we decided to sit in the parking lot at Great Thumb Basin and map out a route around the park we wanted to take over the course of a few days. This made picking where we wanted to go a lot less overwhelming. I just Googled all the spots we were going to drive by on our route for that day, and we picked our favorite places. On our road trip, we spent a lot of time thinking and talking about what life was like hundreds or even thousands of years ago in the US as a Native American. Seeing the land totally untouched and being able to explore without permits or restrictions. We also talked about how much it must have sucked for early settlers to travel across the US by wagon or foot, and how many days it would have taken for them to get as far as we could in a few hours. We felt pretty lucky being able to drive from here to there in just a few days, and lucky to be alive in a time where we could easily and comfortably see so much of the world, even if it was in a tiny little minivan. Next on the route was Old Faithful. Okay, I know I'm gonna sound like a total brat, but I was kind of disappointed. I mean, I had been hearing about Old Faithful my whole life. It was for sure the most overhyped part of any national park we had ever seen. There were like a million billion people sitting in front of it, so we decided to walk to the other side a little further away. Anyway, I'm gonna just try to stop sounding like a brat now. It was really neat how it goes off without fail every 60 minutes. Plus, it does a really great job illustrating the power of all the water underground at Yellowstone.
Faye, where are we heading?
Morning Glory.
We're heading to Morning Glory? Now we're talking. Here we come, Morning Glory.
We kept following the long wooden walkway from the backside of Old Faithful and saw a bunch of stunning springs and pools. But the Morning Glory pool definitely took the cake. It was like a mile walk from the Old Faithful parking lot. Our walk there kind of reminded me of the Great Thumb Geyser Basin. It for sure vindicated waiting an hour for Old Faithful to blow. You're about to see the first of many buffalo we spotted while at the park. These cute, cuddly looking beasts get to call Yellowstone home, and we certainly felt like we were guests in their home. They roam the road causing celebrated traffic, reminding all their visitors to slow down. We definitely couldn't have asked for better hosts. The next day was pretty cloudy and drizzly, but I wasn't going to let that get in the way of what I was most excited to see in Yellowstone, the Grand Prismatic Spring. Can you say color therapy? Oh my gosh, if I thought there were a lot of people at Old Faithful, there were literally tour buses of tourists being dropped off to walk around the caldera, but I did not care one tiny little bit. This was absolutely worth all the hype and tourists shoving me out of their way. We somehow made our way back through the sea of tourists to the minivan after gazing at the mesmerizing spring. Next on our agenda for the day were the artist paint pots. I couldn't believe back at the Grand Prismatic Spring, people were actually walking off of the walkway to get a selfie despite all the warning signs. There are thermal springs forming every day under the ground at the park that you most likely can't see and could definitely step into, hence the wooden walkways all over the park. I'll spare you the horror story effects, but they are no bueno. Okay, now I know this is gonna sound weird as if I haven't already, but just hear me out. I couldn't help but think about the news during our time on the road. I was continually blown away that the parks we were visiting weren't highlighted on the news, or like the breaking news. More importantly, why isn't this something doctors prescribe? Nature medicine is the best medicine. It humbles, heals, and nourishes. Go hug a sequoia, go lay on the rocks in Yosemite, or let your eyes drink in the vibrant colored pools of water in Yellowstone. At the very least, just go get out of the city and sit under a tree. Nature is designed perfectly, and human beings are a beautiful detail in that design. We are not separate from the trees, the water, the animals, the soil, or the stars. We are all made from the same elements. Allowing myself to feel and tune into the unconditional love nature persistently offers was some of the strongest, most healing medicine I have ever given myself. Our last stop of the day inside the park were the Mammoth Hot Springs in the northern part of Yellowstone. We thought they were the kind of hot springs you could get into, but they definitely were not. They were more just like nature's artwork. After we left the Mammoth Hot Springs, we went to a hot spring you could actually get into. We drove like 10 minutes just outside of the northern border of the park to get to Boiling River. It is a beautifully freezing cold river that has a hot spring flowing into it. The hot spring is only like a 15-minute walk from the parking lot, so it was definitely worth going to. You just want to make sure you get there before 6 p.m. because a ranger comes and makes sure everybody leaves on time. We spent just about an hour in the man-made rock pools separating the hot water from the freezing cold river water before we made our walk back to the car. On our way out of the park for the evening, we ran into a little bit of traffic caused by our friendly hosts crossing the road.
You guys see up there all the buffalo? Look like little ants, but they're not, they're buffalo.
I was notorious for falling asleep as soon as the sun set on our road trip. Getting to spend so much time in the moon and the sunlight felt so nourishing and harmonizing. I found myself waking up and going to sleep with the sun, and holy smokes, my body never felt better. Even though we lived by the beach in San Diego and spent plenty of time outside, I never realized how much of my life I spent hidden away from the sun and especially the moon, until we lived in a van for a month. Plus, it was really starting to get cold at night where we were, so that made it extra hard to stay up later. Driving out of the park that night was such a treat. The sun setting on the mountainside was breathtaking. The temperature that night was pretty breathtaking too, at 30 degrees. We tucked into our sleeping bags under all the blankets we had and put on our warmest socks, and honestly, we had a pretty good night's sleep. Here's one of our hosts wishing us sweet dreams for the night. When I woke up and looked out the car window in the morning, I felt like I was still dreaming. Like I was confused. It was stunning, but it was crazy because we had gone from the desert to the sequoias to Yosemite and a lot more in such a short time period. Now we were in Wyoming. After I finished waking up and realizing where we were, we drove
to make
back into
breakfast
the park and visit the Grand Canyon of Yellowstone. When we got to our kitchen that morning, we spotted a herd of buffalo on top of the mountain, off in the distance. They slowly migrated all the way to our front door. I'm not gonna lie, I got kind of scared. They could smell our food and were gonna come get us.
Yeah, they were all the way up there at the top of the hill this morning. They've been migrating, and then here's another little homie pack. They look so small out there, but they're really big. They are not small at all. Look at these guys out there. They're crazy. They're getting closer. So I think what's happening is that they can smell our breakfast and they're just making their way over here. Lucky for us, they were only interested in grass. Even though I was scared of the buffalo, not everyone was, as you saw. I couldn't believe how close those people wound up getting to that big herd. Since we've been there have been multiple reports of buffalo charging people who have gotten too close, so please don't get any ideas from those people. Don't ever get that close. They just want a taste of my cooking. They just know. They know what's good, pretty much. They know what's good. Coffee. Perfection. Good coffee? Let's see that first sip. It's a happy man right there. Those are some happy buffalo right there. They're eating their breakfast. We're gonna eat ours. Let's see. It's been like a few minutes. With breakfast ready, it was time to say goodbye to our new furry friends and make our way to the Grand Canyon of Yellowstone. We got some, let's see if we can see. We got some black bean, broccoli, sweet potato, and it's going in the mouth. Oh, that was a big bite.
That was a delicious bite.
Delicious? Can we get a thumbs up for the camera?
Definite thumbs up.
It needed a little tap, but just a tiny bit. That's good. Alright, and we're good to go. We kind of started laughing when we got there because, I mean, it was absolutely nothing like the Grand Canyon in Arizona. However, it was equally as majestic as you can see here. And we understood why they named it the Grand Canyon of Yellowstone, because that's exactly what it was. It was pretty surreal and psychedelic looking into the canyon, especially in contrast with the rest of the park at Yellowstone. We were so sad that our time at Yellowstone was coming to an end, and we had to say see you later to the national park I had been waiting to visit since I was a little girl. Leaving the park felt like we were leaving another planet. Every park we had been to had a magical, otherworldly energy, but the spirit of Yellowstone was almost palpable, especially if you're a highly sensitive and intuitive person like myself. We were driving away from another mind-blowing piece of the US I got to check off my bucket list. I was feeling pretty darn grateful driving out of the park. Grateful to have visited all the parks we were lucky enough to explore, especially the one we were driving out of. This would be the last national park we visited that year before we took off on our biggest adventure of 2018, Southeast Asia. But we still had a few national forests to check off our list before that happened. Next up was the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed following along our adventure in Yellowstone. Let me know in the comments below if you've ever been to Yellowstone or what your favorite national park is. If you enjoyed, please like and subscribe. It really helps my channel out and keeps me motivated to make the next video. Talk to you guys soon. Bye bye.